Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today I want to texture the texture paste. So I'm going to create a couple of cards with you today, and I'm going to be doing one circular shaped one and one square shaped, I think. Except for this technique gets really fun, and so I could keep going and going and going. Now, I definitely recommend trying what you have to hand, and for me, that is going to be the Ranger Opaque Matte Texture Paste. These are some of the tools that you could use. Now, these are actually my cake decorating tools. They're just not ones that I reach for anymore, and I know I turned some of them into my gel printing texture tools, and then some of these other ones I figure would be fun for some of these paper crafting techniques. So you can pick these up in, $2 stores, cheap and cheerful ones, or something like Spotlight here in New Zealand. There is plenty of them about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put I would call this a medium layer. I don't want to see the paper through this, but I also don't want to make it too thick that it's just never going to dry. I do actually end up putting some removable adhesive down there just to stick this and make sure that it doesn't move around as much when I am putting my texture paste on. So I really just use a palette knife to sort of smooth it and get it somewhat even-ish. It doesn't have to have smooth on top, but just make sure that I don't have any spots that have no texture paste. And then the world is your oyster as to the patterns that you can create. And the beauty of this is that if you don't like the pattern that you've created, just swipe on over it again, and then you get to start again and try something else. You could use cake decorating tools, you could use the other end of a ruler, you could use the other ends of paintbrushes, you could use so many different things to create texture, of course. I'm going to go with some just little swirls and wiggles, and then I'm going to move on to this circular one as well. And then I actually want to try some different texture pastes as well. This one I do quite like. I will say it's not a perfect white. It's not a crisp white. It's more of an off-white, I would say. And I mean, if you want to, and if you want to avoid the white part of this, then you could add just a little bit of color, like even a spun sugar distress ink or a tumbled glass distress ink, just like a drop of the re-inker or a little bit smushed onto an acrylic block and mixed in. That would take away that off-white texture and just give you some really faint color in the background. That would be fun too. I mean, honestly, I could keep going. This one was more of a natural texture, so it was just created from the palette knife, and I wanted it to be sort of nice and layered. And then I also just got some Rise and Shine, which is essentially a, metallic texture paste, I suppose, and I thought that would be fun to try out in the silver. This is a quite a fun silver. It's almost like a gunmetal kind of silver or something along those lines, but nonetheless, you could even use these tools, and I just decided to do lots and lots of little wiggles. I mean, this would look fun as some blue, like some light blue texture paste, or even not quite properly mixed in blue with some white texture paste, and then this would be great ocean waves or underwater scene, or even in the sky. You could do, lots of different variations. I could have kept going for so long with this one. I am going to create a square matting layer, except for I don't have a square in this Deckle edge set here from Honeybee. There are squares available. You can absolutely buy the square set, but I just don't have them, and so I shall make one. And the way I'm going to do that is I just cut out the rectangle, and then I turn the rectangle sideways and make it into a square. And that way, all of my sides have that beautiful Deckle edge. You could use any decorative die to get a beautiful edge, or if you have like decorative trimmers or the Deckle edge trimmer from Tim Holtz, something along those lines. And then I have the beautiful Cosmos Duo. This is one of my favorites because it takes mere seconds to color, and that is my type of card making. I want something to look stunning, look beautiful, look like it took me a long time, and I can actually do it really quickly. So these are all the pieces. It just cuts those 2 flower heads, the 1 stem, and then the 2 centers. And if I don't even have to get ink out, I can just reuse the residual ink on the end of my finger daubers. That way, this does make this a very, very quick process. I've got a little bit of pink there in the center. I'm going to use some green. I believe this might be like a mowed lawn or a twisted citron kind of green. And then I generally make the centers yellow, and that is pretty much good to go. You can also leave these flowers pretty much white, but given that I'm doing an already white background, I do want to include just a little bit of color somewhere. So this is what I've ended up with. Now, I do agree that some of these are hard to see on camera because I went for the white on white, but if I hold them up, you can kind of see the texture here. And my main point for these is that these are just really fun to run your fingers over and touch, and not only visual texture but physical texture, and so that is really fun for the recipient. I think something just a little bit different to add into your cards. Here is the Rise and Shine. This one dried very fast, much faster than I was expecting. And then this one here too. I mean, this one to me kind of almost looks like a little heartbeat, and that would be fun like on a baby card if you did some baby pink or baby blue or some lemon color in the background. But anyhow, lots of different variations that you could create. I'm going to start with the square one. I started off with a 5 by 5 inch card base, and then basically from there we're just going to layer up some bits and pieces so that we get a really layered, textured look. You can always add some extra cardstock or some foam tape in between the layers, and that will also give you some definition as well. I'm going to go for a mixture of the 2. This one here down onto the Deckle Edge Square is just going to be straight down with no layers in between, but then on the back of there I do have some 2mm foam tape, and that's going to give me that little bit of dimension as well. But as you can see, this is a very textured texture paste, and this feels really fun to run your fingers down, so I hope that that is part of the appeal of these kinds of cards. So when it comes to putting this together, as I mentioned, this one is quick, easy, and looks stunning. Really easy to put together. I'm going to pop the wee stem. I will need to trim this. I don't think I want the full size of it, so I'm just figuring out where I roughly want things to fit in. I know I need a little room to leave for a sentiment, so I'm just bearing that in mind as well. I pop just some regular glue on the back here. I do make sure that I've got a good amount on the back because it is sinking into, of course, a lot of texture. So I want to make sure it's got some good contact points and just making sure that it is set in place. And then you could add some dimension behind these. I have added a little bit of dimension just behind some of the petals, and then I often like to push the center of the flower right down into the background, and so sort of the petals are up and above, and then the center is just with regular glue and kind of pushed down. So I quite like that look. I'm going the really easy happy birthday little sentiment here. I honestly think this could be used for many an occasion, and even not even including a sentiment on it would also work as well. So super simple with this one, with the little happy birthday. This is some printed, or there are some cutouts from Gina, I believe. Nice and handy to have there, but I popped the centers in the flowers, and this one is done and dusted. We've got that beautiful Deckle edge for a little bit more visual texture around the edges, and then the actual textured paste, and I quite like that. So moving on to the circular one, and I'm going to go with a really super simple kind of look here. I do pop a good amount of foam tape on the back, make sure that this is nice and supported and that it's not going to sink down anywhere. Super easy. I just cut some squares in half as well and make some triangles. That fills up the back beautifully for the circle. And then this one is again going to go onto a square card base, but we are going to have the layered circles. So I do have the Deckle edge circles and rectangles. As I mentioned, they do come in a square, but I don't have the square set because sometimes the budget only allows so much. I've had these for a couple of years now, and they are absolutely a much loved and used die set, both of the Deckle edged ones. And then I've got the Waffle flower thank you set. I have die cut these with the gold shadow and some white in the text, and then you could put these straight in the center. I was going to have them off to the side so I didn't cover up quite as much of the texture paste in the background, but I ended up going probably more center, honestly. And then just for a finishing touch, because it felt like it needed just something, I'm going to take I believe it's the Christmas branch, which is no longer available, part of that in some die cut gold cardstock as well, and just pop it underneath there so it pops out of the side. But the main part of the card is the texture. You can see that really clearly on both of the cards that we have created today. So I hope this encourages you to get out your texture paste, have a play, find some things like, even if you ran it through like a wooden fork or a plastic fork that you have at home, you could use some anything around the home, any cardboard kitchen rolls to make some circle texture and texture paste, all those sorts of things. Have a look around, see what you can find, and create some beautiful textures. Thank you so much for joining me. As usual, I'll have everything used in this video linked below in the description, as well as my mailing address, my Facebook group, and anything else you want to check out. Other than that, thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.